Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. That makes it Election Day, though most of you have already voted. We've set this day aside for stragglers, I guess, to get to the polls and cast their ballots. I don't know why we reward them with their own day. Quite frankly, all of this could be fraud, and we should have counted yesterday. If something like 60+% of the eligible population actually cast their votes, who knows who all these fraudsters are today? We probably should have figured out who won last night and have this settled by now. And I don't see why we couldn't have done it. But it's tradition, and I guess that's the only reason we're doing it today. Last night, of course, I don't know what to call them, the weirdos who cast their votes at midnight in New Hampshire. And there's another town up there that does this besides Dixville Notch, but Dixville Notch hogs all the limelight, and that's because of all the dicks, I guess, who live there in Dixville. Where else would they live? But I guess they did their voting well enough. The results, should you at any point begin to care about it, are 5 votes for Joe Biden and 0 votes for Donald Trump or anybody else. Very often there are libertarian votes cast up there, but I guess the Dixville Notch folks have had enough. Donald Trump, of course, is probably already suing to have all of those votes thrown out on the basis that it took too long to count them and it must be fraud or something like that. I'm sure by now he's suing about it. But polls are opening across America. We haven't quite gotten to the West Coast poll opening time yet, I don't think. But I think our mountain time zone should be opened up by now. And, we'll try and take you through the day. Weak-voiced, perhaps, though I may be. Armando will come on to try and help us through the first hour. We thought about a quick Florida hit yesterday, and I missed the note. So we'll make up for it today, see what's going on, see what's on his mind. We'll see whether Joan McCarter can be torn away from the computer during the second hour of today's show. I imagine, given the number of days that have thrown hectic work schedules or various other news item curveballs at us in the past, Election Day is as likely as any of them to do it again, but fingers crossed, and we'll see what comes our way. Plenty, of course, to catch up on. Glancing around the country, I think we can, we'll be mostly avoiding live breaking news coverage, I think, of what's happening in the polls. It'll probably take too long. It won't be until the show is over and the East Coast heads out for lunch that we find out about how many people are being intimidated at the polls by pickup truck parades of Trump supporters who should otherwise be in line to vote somewhere. But maybe that's the upside of it. They'll all be having pickup truck parades and forget to get in line to vote until it's too late. Well, there's always something we can hope for. Let's see. Bill is up and about in Portland, Maine, as usual, and ready to roll with a morning tweet. It's been a while since we read it out. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. This is true, as evidenced by the progress the program has taken to this point. Today's presidential election contest, that's what's happening today. Be the 50th caller, and I, Kagro X, will send you a free authentic notch from Dixville. You don't have to put it in anywhere on your body in particular just because it comes from Dixville. It's really a non-gender specific notch. Put it anywhere you like. And what is the other town, by the way? Anybody from up in New Hampshire know or could look it up for me in Wikipedia and send us a note so we can inform everybody. It's very important that you know who's voting early and not getting any credit for it. I feel bad for those people. All right, well, like I said, plenty going on. There's a pandemic still raging and numbers are spiking, and records are being broken in terms of the number of people admitted to hospitals. So the timing is fun and exciting, I guess. We'll be seeing people, no doubt, transmitting a lot of coronavirus in too close quarters during today's electioneering as well, standing perhaps too close to one another in line, unmasked perhaps in line. But actually, probably today is the day that the largest number of anti-maskers will give in to the whole thing rather than have an argument about whether or not they can get in and cast their ballots. So maybe maybe it might be a high point for masking, but I think there'll be just a bit of transmission going on today, which will make people sick around Thanksgiving time. Some of them will miss their family dinners. We all should be skipping the family dinners, of course. Some of them will go ahead anyway and infect others who likewise will fall ill around Christmas time. So things are really lining up for a fantastic end to an amazing year. All right. Republicans allegedly fanning out across the country to watch, quote unquote, watch the polls and threaten others who they think might be there to vote for Joe Biden. So that should be fun to watch the reports of that roll in. Turns out that it's the threats of raising a so-called army on behalf of Donald Trump to do all this poll watching appears to have mostly fallen apart, and a small brigade is pretty much what they've been able to put together. I know there was a report to that effect in Talking Points memo, but I'm starting to get the idea that very few of the things that I press the pocket button on these days are actually getting filed. I think there might be some kind of bug in the system with respect to how it works from out of Twitter. But at any rate, fewer people showed up to be trained up for these things than they anticipated. And then those who did show up for the training mostly got what you might expect from a Trump-type operation. Training mostly focused on paranoia and made-up stories about the evils of the Democrats they'd be confronting, as opposed to how to actually watch the polls. I happen to have handy here a piece from Slate written by Jeremy Stahl with the interesting title of What I Learned from Training to Be a Right-Wing Poll Watcher. And this gives you some indication of what they're teaching everybody. Rule number 1, it says here in the subheader, don't let the Democrats slip you laxatives. That's the actual training that goes on. It's quite enlightening. Most of the good stuff is up at the top. That makes it relatively easy to get through. Here's his account of how he was trained down in Texas. Alan Vera, ballot security chairman for Texas's Harris County GOP. That, of course, the location of the big Texas lawsuit to throw out the 100,000 plus votes cast in drive-through voting. We'll give you a brief update on what's going on there, perhaps later in the show. I don't know whether that's something Armando wants to talk about. But before we go on, if you're too anxious about that, long story short, the case was taken to federal court yesterday, and an extremely partisan and extremely conservative judge drawn for the case, but even he wasn't buying it. However, he has left the door open for the Fifth Circuit to reverse him on some grounds here, but he basically decided he wasn't going to touch the 100,000 plus votes already cast in this fashion, but left the door open for the possibility that the Fifth Circuit could later decide that he hadn't handled the case properly, and perhaps even step in on an emergency basis overnight last night to shut down the drive-through voting locations planned originally for today in Harris County. And as it turns out, the Fifth Circuit has declined to do so, but it didn't matter because that possibility was there. They left open the possibility of going back after the fact and invalidating votes cast at most of these drive-through stations. And so in an abundance of caution, Harris County actually shut down most of those locations. They kept only one open that appeared to comply with the weird reading of the guidelines necessary for validating this location as a authentic voting location that was that were laid out by the complainants here, the Republicans who were suing. So essentially, the Republicans who were suing lost in court twice, but won anyway, and got exactly the conditions that they were looking for, at least for Election Day. So another example of Republicans getting their way, even though the law and all the courts are against them. How odd that is. But anyway, back to the lighthearted story of getting trained as a poll watcher in Harris County, Texas. And, well, as we started out here saying, Alan Vera is the name of the ballot security chairman and the guy doing the training. And he wants prospective poll watchers, remember, to keep an eye on their coffee. He starts out this way with this quote, "Here's a tip that I almost hate to have to tell you, but do not accept coffee from the election judge or any of the clerks," he warns in a training video for volunteer poll watchers. "We've had too many instances in the past where laxatives have been hidden inside coffee, and our poll watchers end up spending the day in the restroom instead of in the polls watching what's going on. The first rule of poll watching speaks to the bigger lesson I learned from sitting through hours of conservative poll watching training videos over the past several weeks. These programs are more about instilling paranoia in the Republican Party faithful than about actually teaching them to successfully suppress votes, which I guess is a good thing, right?" Vera's laxative lecture was part of a training I took from one of the country's most influential conservative vote monitoring groups, True the Vote. We've read about them in the past. I can't believe they're still around, but they are. They're grifters extraordinaire, I guess, and so they've stolen enough money to stay alive through these years. True the Vote grew out of a Houston Tea Party group accused of intimidating voters of color in 2010, 10 years ago. It's still around, and has since expanded its reach beyond Harris County, the opposite of what's supposed to happen. Qualifications for poll observers vary from state to state, but as of September, True the Vote claimed to have trained 10,000 poll observers it hoped to push into the field around the country. You generally have to sign up to be a poll observer through party officials, which was easy enough for me to do in California, our writer tells us. Groups like True the Vote also lobby states to pass laws making it harder to vote. They create court challenges that threaten the franchise, and Donald Trump is already promising to weaponize their tactics against a full ballot count. So I guess what's actually happening here is Alan Vera of Harris County, Texas, made a training video that was played for True the Vote volunteers around the country, and he watched it in California, training to work there. True the Vote had planned, and this is some plan here, to recruit Navy SEALs to watch the polls. Sure, of course. We just, why don't we just ring the doorbell at 1 Navy Street and ask for the SEALs? And hey, guys, if you're not busy, could you put on all your weapons and then go to every polling place in America and look for suspicious stuff? Because you guys know what's suspicious. You're Navy SEALs. That was unlikely to work out, really, from the beginning. But it's a great bragging point, and I'm sure lots of people who signed up with True the Vote probably subsequently put on their resumes that they, quote-unquote, trained with Navy SEALs, Probably worked, too. Anyway, True the Vote had planned to apparently recruit Navy SEALs to watch the polls, as The Intercept reported. I imagine they didn't believe them when they reported it. And there were fears that the Trump army of observers would be 50,000 strong. But the threat of intimidation has largely fizzled. And the actual poll watching training programs themselves are infused with a constant sense of paranoia that borders on more on ludicrous than frightening. Take True the Vote's training course for poll watchers in Texas, its flagship program. While True the Vote is ostensibly nonpartisan, the training is run by Vera, the Harris County Republican official. Vera's 2-hour session, in which he narrates a slideshow presentation, is focused almost entirely on how to prevent Democratic voting officials from making mistakes in obeying the state's rules, the most onerous in the country, by the way, or doing what he characterizes as, quote, fraud. The goal of preventing mistakes in election law enforcement seems innocent enough, but True the Vote is fixated on possible mistakes as signs of intentional Democratic malfeasance, which the group and others use for the partisan goal of pushing for harsher and harsher voting restrictions. Vera himself often seems more like the Wile E. Coyote of voter suppression than an anti-democratic mastermind. Take an episode from the 2018 election reported by HuffPost, during which Vera, quote, put on a patriotic necktie, because why not, walked into the voter registration office in Houston and challenged the registration of some 4,000 voters. These voters, Vera claimed, no longer lived at the addresses the state had on file and should be purged from the rolls. In the end, 1,700 voters who lived exactly where the files said they lived had their registrations mistakenly suspended because of Vera. It also turned out that Vera's voting challenge itself was unlawful. According to Texas law, you need personal knowledge of the voter's address changes, which in these cases did not exist. But he did have a patriotic tie on, so they just did what he asked. Isn't that great? If Vera is the Wile E. Coyote, then the training is an Acme toolkit he is sharing with you. Hence the earnest warning in his pre-recorded video that one of the biggest dangers to poll watchers is laxative-armed Democrats. I emailed multiple times to Vera to ask if he could provide, just out of curiosity, I guess, any confirmed examples of Democratic Texas voting officials who are elected poisoning a True the Vote poll watcher or poll watchers from any other group with which he's affiliated. As of press time, he has not responded. A Google search for laxative poisonings at the polls yielded a couple of examples from the 1880s, including poisoned sardines and crackers in a Mississippi county in 1880. The most recent mention of laxative poisoning during a voting process that I could find came in a 1962 issue of Life magazine, in which a Baltimore election official described officials being, quote, slipped a Mickey, usually a high-powered laxative, in his coffee so that he is indisposed several minutes at a time at frequent intervals. Just to pause there for a second, take you back to what Alan Vera starts with in his training video, right? The tip that I almost hate to have to tell you, don't accept any coffee. This is the quote, we've had too many instances in the past where laxatives have been hidden inside coffee and our poll watchers end up spending the day in the restroom. I suspect that the poll watchers were in the bathroom for other reasons. I mean, I just thought that was kind of interesting. We've had too many instances. How many? 0. But still, even 0 is too many in this age of zero tolerance. But we're all becoming pretty tolerant of 0, if you ask me. Anyway, much of the rest of the program entails a fairly straightforward recitation of the rules and obligations for Texas poll watchers, but the gist seems mainly to be to teach volunteers how to annoy election officials and get away with it. Vera's world is filled with hostile election clerks and judges who will try to intimidate or deceive the poll observer into not fulfilling their duties. For Vera, those duties include following the judge after voting has ended to ensure that she delivers the ballots to the county authority without committing vote felonies. Now, a lot of judges are going to try to trick you, Vera warns. They're going to say, oh, y'all have been so great. Here's $10 from me. Go out and have a nice dinner. We'll close this up without you. Don't fall for it. Stay until the judge leaves. I don't know how often that works. And $10 doesn't buy you that nice a dinner. Anyway, at this point, Vera says you should consider following the judge as she delivers the ballots. He or she is required to drive in a safe manner that allows you to follow him or her safely, Vera adds, suggesting the elected judge is going to try to drop your tail. Another very important slide explains what to avoid doing, so that you don't get kicked out of the polling place as a poll watcher. That would seem to be a pretty important part of the job too, but apparently one they have great difficulty with. At any rate, we'll probably jump out of this at this point. You get the basic gist of what's going on. I mentioned to you that there was a TPM piece about how few people were actually turning out for this, and I see if I can't find that piece easily enough for you. But I have a link here in the Slate piece that to the article from ProPublica that goes along with the comment that the effort to recruit 50,000 people has largely fizzled. We'll take a look. Oh, as a matter of fact, it runs the same headline as the TPM piece, so maybe they were just running this. So far, Trump's army of poll watchers looks more like a small platoon. I knew that someone was using that language out there. Despite appeals from the president and his son, few of his supporters have shown up to watch early voting. One explanation, the task is just too boring. Sounds like they actually got that one pretty correct. Let's see, Donald Trump Jr. It starts out with looking straight into a camera. At the end of September, as triumphant music rose in a crescendo, the radical left are laying the groundwork to steal this election from my father, he said. We cannot let that happen. We need every able-bodied man and woman to join the army for Trump's election security operation. It was an echo of what his father, President Donald Trump, allegedly, has said in both his presidential campaigns at a September campaign rally in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The president encouraged his audience to be poll watchers. Watch all the thieving and stealing and robbing they do, he said, because this is important. But the poll-watching army that the Trumps have tried to rally hasn't materialized. Although there's no official data, election officials across the country say that they have seen relatively few Republican poll watchers during early voting, and that at times Democratic poll watchers have outnumbered the GOP's. In Colorado and Nevada, where the Trump campaign was particularly active in recruiting poll watchers, its efforts largely petered out. Jordan Fuchs, I guess, Fuchs, it could be pronounced in other ways, but we'll go with Fuchs. The Deputy Secretary of State in Georgia, a swing state experiencing record voter turnout, said both county governments and political parties can supply poll watchers in Georgia. Most are showing up in Fulton County, whose seat is Atlanta. I am receiving reports of a few thousand poll watchers from a variety of left-leaning groups. There are a very few poll watchers from right-leaning groups, she said. The Trump campaign is simply calling for additional poll watchers because they know there is a dearth of right-leaning poll watchers. Although Kentucky election law doesn't allow for poll watchers, I guess keep that in mind if you're down in Kentucky, the parties can have registered challengers at the polls on Election Day whose only job is to challenge a voter's eligibility. In Fayette County, home of Lexington, Republicans have submitted only 7 names of challengers, while Democrats have submitted 117. Don Blevins Jr., the clerk in the county, says he doesn't know how many will actually show up on Tuesday. Only in recent years have campaigns thought about doing this and then rarely followed through, he said. In Williamson County, Texas, a swing county just north of Austin, election administrator Christopher Davis said that the few poll watchers there were mostly sent by a local conservative activist who promotes unfounded claims of voter fraud. It sounds about right. When the county opened up its central count office this past weekend to process mailed ballots, only 1 poll watcher showed. The watcher, Davis said, was from the Trump campaign and behaved according to the rules. Maybe we're just lucky here in Wilco or Williamson County, he said. Several Trump supporters in Arizona said they volunteered to be poll watchers, but there was no follow-up. I actually signed up twice because I never heard from them. I was never contacted. I signed up almost 2 months ago, said Lynn Berryman, I'm not sure, Berreman, who lives in Phoenix, in case you want to go visit. Hopefully it's because they already have enough people. A late October lawsuit by Nevada's Republican Party tacitly acknowledged that the GOP's poll-watching operation there was ineffective. The party sued Clark County, home of Las Vegas, in an effort to stop the counting of mail-in ballots until, quote, meaningful observation was allowed. The suit alleged, and I think we heard a little bit about this yesterday, that poll watchers were not allowed to be close enough to the counting process to do their jobs. I think this is the group that sued for the voter files and all the signatures, saying that they were going to try and match them all individually, which really sounds like just an effort to hold up the counting. A state court judge denied the request for a temporary injunction hours after it was filed. Despite the small number of official poll watchers, unauthorized Trump supporters have at times shown up and behaved aggressively at polling places and drop boxes, according to tips received by Electionland, the ProPublica election coverage group. The Trump campaign didn't respond to any requests for comment. The paucity of Republican poll watchers doesn't necessarily reflect a lack of enthusiasm for the candidate. In fact, avid supporters may prefer more vocal or demonstrative ways of expressing their views than watching polls all day. Trump's cries for help in the prevention of fraud make the poll watcher's role seem far more dramatic and consequential than it actually is. More than 20 Trump campaign training videos for poll watchers, reviewed by ProPublica, make clear the mundane nature of the task, encouraging volunteers to be on time, to bring a water bottle, to not interact with voters, and to be respectful, quote, even to our Democratic friends, unquote, as though they had any. Poll watching is like watching paint dry, said Justin Levitt, a professor at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, specializing in elections. If you're waiting for the busloads of fraud to arise, and what you get is small American flag-waving democracy, well, I guess that's going to be pretty boring. You begin to go out of your head. It's like sitting in a field waiting for the UFOs, and the UFOs never show up, and they don't. Anyway, it's like sitting in a field waiting for UFOs to show up, and then you're just sitting in a field, which is fine for a couple hours, but polls are open about 15 hours a day. So that gives you some idea of what's likely to be going on in the field with the official disruptors. Then, of course, the big worry is for the unofficial people, since they haven't been trained and don't know the difference between what's legal and illegal, to get out and put on their own fireworks show. And I guess we'll be seeing reports of that trickle in during the day. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. And yes, all right, so we'll give you a flavor of what to look for in terms of ineffective poll watching from the Republicans today. Probably the bigger problem, the people who didn't sign up for anything, didn't go through any kind of training at all, and have no awareness of what the limitations of legal poll watching really are. And but they will insist, of course, that they are official poll watchers deputized directly by the president, and it is perfectly legal and constitutional for them to hit you in the head with their Trump flags. Well, it says so right in the Constitution. Armando, of course, here with us to discuss some of that.
Sorry, David.
Hey, that's okay. No,
good morning.
We don't care about those sorts of formalities. There's another voice here. We'll listen to it and find out who it is.
Where'd this come from?
Yeah.
Actually, I think to me, the import of the poll watcher story is part of basically a pretty telegraphed plan to challenge Pennsylvania voting and results. As you know, Pennsylvania Republicans, at the behest of Trump, just as they did the Republicans in Michigan and Wisconsin, refused to permit the early processing of mail ballots. Just so everybody knows, Florida has every ballot that was received by yesterday has already been processed. That is, it's in the system. They press a button, they know the result, right? And of course, there's voting going on today, and we'll talk about Florida voting today a little later. But I just want you to understand, it's not hard to report most of your results on election night.
No.
Pennsylvania could have done it. Wisconsin could have done it. Michigan could have done it. They're not going to be able to. And the reason why is Donald Trump told Republicans in those states, do not allow them to count the mail ballots early. Why would Donald Trump insist on that? The same reason he sent fake poll watchers to Pennsylvania precincts in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to yell fraud at the polls, stop counting, knock all those things out. He's going to create chaos if he can. That's just the plan. That's been the plan for a while. Why is Donald Trump saying everything needs to be done by November 3rd while at the same time stopping everything being done by November 3rd?
Yes, that's the real question there. And it's just a matter of I don't want those ballots counted. To the extent that we believe that early voting leans Democratic, we don't want it counted on time, and we don't want to count it late either. We don't want to count it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's many prongs to this plan. Okay, the other part of the plan, which Real Clear Politics Average is playing into, is having people like Insider Advantage and Trafalgar releasing last-minute polls to lower the average. You can't really look at those RCP averages. I'm glad Nate Cohn finally recognized that this morning, and most people have. They're all part of the Trump team. I mean, you've got two pollsters, and I put pollsters in quotes, who went on Sean Hannity 2 nights ago, 2 nights ago, and said that Trump better win Pennsylvania by 5 because the Democrats are going to commit voter fraud and steal it if it's less than that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
These are people who label themselves nonpartisan pollsters. What joke are you getting me? So, do you see the formula for chaos? Yeah. These guys say voter fraud. RCP puts them to basically tilt every average. The idea is to foment chaos.
Right.
And you get through night one. Trump runs out there and declares victory, and in theory, it has no legal import, but okay, what does legal mean?
Yeah.
Well, I got to go to a court. They go to a court.
Okay.
And they say these votes are invalid, yada, yada, yada. For some reason. They'll think of a reason.
Yeah.
Do you trust Trump judges to not agree if it's going to be determinative? How does it become determinative? Well, you've heard me yell about this for 5 months, and I'll yell about it just one last time.
Sure. Still have a chance.
Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Ohio, Arizona. Trump needs every one of those states. They all process their ballots early. They all will have calls tonight, almost certainly. Biden wins one of those, and that's over. Trump's little scheme fails. Can we win one of them? Well, we're in the fight in all of them. As I'm a Florida guy, so I can talk more knowledgeably about Florida, but according to polling, North Carolina is close, Georgia's close, Texas is close, Arizona, we have a slight lead.
Yes.
Ohio, I guess Trump has a slight lead in Ohio. They're all
probably
within fights. We can lose them all, and then we have chaos. I've come to the conclusion that most everybody in Trump land and everywhere thinks Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are pretty safe for Biden. In a normal world, that's the election. You don't have to worry about Nebraska 2 or Maine 2 or Arizona or anything else. That's 278 electoral votes Biden wins. And it would have been the same for Hillary. Hillary lost Michigan by 0.2 percentage points, 10,000 votes. Right. She lost Pennsylvania by 60,000 votes, 0.7, and she lost Wisconsin by 29,000 votes, 0.4. It was that close.
Yeah.
It was, as you've heard the cliche, it was 77,000 votes in 3 states that determined the election last time, and that's literally true. Now, I would throw in 113,000 in Florida because we lost by 1 in Florida last time. But the blue wall is looking pretty good right now, better than it did for Clinton. For sure, we're in a better place than we were in Clinton. I don't recall exactly our feelings that day. Maybe we were overconfident. I didn't feel overconfident. I did think we were going to win Florida, so that was probably I was one of the more overconfident ones. And we got swamped on election day by 360,000 votes and lost by 100,000. There's just I'll talk about Florida in detail because that's what I know best. But
sure.
I just wanted to give an overall picture of putting your poll watchers story in perspective, because I think it's just part of a strategy of hoping you get all those toss-up red states. So chaos and uncertainty in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, particularly Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And then throw the dice and see what you can convince people to accept.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it should be clear, in order to get a story on the news tonight wherein the reporters say that Trump poll watchers say that they witnessed massive fraud, you don't need to have any poll watchers to have that story. You just need to have a person go to the reporter and say, I was an official Trump poll watcher and I saw fraud, and them say, can you say that again into our camera?
Exactly.
You don't have to watch anything.
Well, and that's the way the media works, unfortunately. They still have no filters. They have no way of dealing with deliberate misinformation.
Yeah.
And it worries me. They've been, some of them have been better about it. I think we've been yelling at them now for 4 months about this, so maybe they're ready for it. But, the other day, Rick Klein, who's the political director at ABC, quoted Jason Miller on a Sunday show saying, if it's not decided on election night, blah, 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 they're going to try to steal it afterwards. Some nonsense like that. I forget exactly what he said.
I'll put drugs in your drink.
And Klein writes, Miller makes the point that, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, we all came down on him on like a ton of bricks, including some other reporters. And he's like, no, but look at my second tweet where he said, well, that's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. It's necessarily false. But Rick Klein is a particularly bad reporter. So, we basically just need to discredit Rick Klein and people like him. I think that's the better strategy. So don't listen to him. He's a bad reporter. By the way, George Stephanopoulos didn't challenge him on the show, so he did a bad job.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. He's been through elections. What's he doing?
I mean, I think he wasn't listening because, Miller just blathers on about nothing, and George was probably thinking about lunch or something like that.
Next question.
I mean, you don't really have Jason Miller on to have a conversation and ask him questions because he's just going to blather anyway. It's just both sides approach that you got to have him on because you do. I mean, I figure, it's one thing to have him on, but be prepared to challenge everything he said. Stephanopoulos simply wasn't. He did a bad job. But they're going to do bad jobs. That's what's going to happen. So you just need to call them out and not accept it. And it actually has some impact, I think, especially when more prominent people do that. So that's their strategy. I mean, again, they could win all the states that I've said, the red toss-up, I'm calling them, or the needle states, as Nate Silver said. By the way, yes, we have the needle again. I didn't actually pay attention to the needle in 2016, but a lot of people did.
Yeah, apparently.
But now we have 3 state needles. The 3 states are North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. I don't know. You could have done Arizona maybe, but it's too late in the night. I don't know. But anyway, it's interesting. He chose those 3 because they all are pretty good at counting votes and doing it pretty quickly. And frankly, you can Florida in particular is really tailor-made for a needle because you know where the votes are coming from and you know where they're missing. And the reporting, everyone makes fun of Florida because of 2000, but actually in 2007, Charlie Crist, then a Republican, now our Democratic congressman from Tampa, St. Pete, he did some tremendous work on reform. I understand there's two things that people will hang their hat on against Florida on voting, and that is the voter ID issue, which is fair. That does hurt us somewhat, but a lot of people have adapted to it. And two, the felon stuff. But again, we passed a constitutional amendment in Florida to get people back to vote, and the Republicans in the state government and in the courts on the 11th Circuit denied these people their right to vote that was re-granted them by the people of Florida. So, again, they have no shame. That's the one thing I say about people when they talk about courts. Oh, that court will never do that. Don't say that anymore. Just
no, I don't believe in that as a statement.
Scream about it. Say it would be an outrage if they did that. At least try to pressure them beforehand. Yeah. That's what you got to do. You got to let these judges know you won't accept it, and that goes to a point. By the way, let me give you one of my far-fetched scenarios that you and I talked about before. Pennsylvania becomes a mess. There's challenges. They stop counting. They get close to the safe harbor date of December 7th for turning in the votes, and the Pennsylvania legislature says we're naming the Trump slate.
Right. It's been theorized.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So Amy Coney Barrett.
Yes.
Has to decide, well, can the Pennsylvania Republican legislature do that? By the way, I mean, they clearly can't. The case law is clear. The Constitution is clear. It's not a close case, but neither was Bush v. Gore, okay? In the sense that whether you agreed or disagreed with the Florida Supreme Court's decision on Florida election law, it's the province of the Florida Supreme Court to decide Florida law questions, not the United States Supreme Court. And they invented this concurrence that Rehnquist came up with that, as you now know, 4 justices on the Supreme Court currently have embraced.
Yeah.
And we don't know where Coney Barrett is on it. So don't tell me it can't happen. It can.
Yeah, I would give up on the can't happen. The things that can't happen is you can no longer convince me that things can't happen. I'll wait and see. But yeah, you make a good argument for a good approach. If you're going to say something, don't bother saying it can't happen. Just say outright, up front, well, if this happened, it would be an outrage for which somebody should be disbarred and thrown off the bench.
Right.
Frame it that way.
And of course, yeah. I mean, to take the fairly improbable scenario even further, what happens is the Congress, and if we win both the House and the Senate, and if we win enough state delegations, can reject that slate of delegates. Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court has nothing to say on that.
Yes. Well, supposedly. Yeah, and I don't know what they would do to try and say something.
They literally have no jurisdiction over what Congress does with the Electoral College.
That wouldn't necessarily.
There's a whole process that doesn't involve them.
Right. Again, ordinarily. And it probably wouldn't work, but I suppose they could say, yes, we do. And then it would be a matter of the rest of us saying,
at some point you got to start steeling yourself to saying this. I don't care what you say.
Right.
You're not legitimate.
Yeah. Well,
I don't believe
that's the actual answer.
You have no power in this. I don't care what you say. In fact, once Joe Biden's in office, he's going to go arrest all of you and throw you in jail.
That would be awesome.
It wouldn't be awesome, obviously. But
the Marshal of the Supreme Court will have to do it.
But, all I'm saying is it takes a certain mentality because people have so much faith so much faith in the Supreme Court and the system. And
they would
I
never,
don't anymore.
Yeah. No, I think
I just
we know
don't.
about that. It's hard to think of a reason why.
Andrew Hayden heard that case in Texas yesterday, the motor drive-through voting.
Yes, interesting case.
And what he basically said is, these people already voted. Everyone's going to yell at me because everybody
Yes.
was going to yell at him, including Republicans didn't want him to do anything. And he said, well, it's too late. But if I, and you don't, and then he came up with standing, of course, but all of a sudden standing.
Yeah,
Because,
I was a big fan of standing yesterday, all of a sudden.
Yeah, the Eighth Circuit case, those people had no standing, and
Yes.
they stopped the acceptance of absentee ballots after Election Day arrival, postmark before arriving up to 5 days. And they said, no, Bush v. Gore concurrence. So, and by the way, no one's, that case is still there.
Yeah.
And of course, what that means is if you're in Minnesota, you're taking a chance if you mailed your ballot too late. But what Haanen said, and Haanen's that crazy judge who struck down DAPA and DACA and everything else.
Okay.
An absolute racist Republican who's capable of anything. And he said that he would have stopped that voting. And he'd stop that today. That is, Harris County was going to have drive-through voting today.
Yes.
But he said that we're going to segregate those ballots from today. So right now, I don't think you have standing.
Just
but
in case.
And just so you know, if a party has no standing, a judge has no subject matter jurisdiction. That is, he can't be issuing orders other than dismissal of the case.
Right.
He has
Otherwise,
no power to actually issue an order, but he issued an order anyway.
There it is. It's
Saying
on
he's going
paper.
to segregate the ballots.
Right.
And Harris
Going
County
forward.
prudently canceled drive-through voting today.
Yes,
And
with the exception of one location.
That's probably going to cost 5,000 votes. I mean, it just is, just by statistics. There'll be 5,000 less votes out of Harris County because of what Haanen did.
By the way, if you're in Harris County and you waited to, you were planning to do drive-through voting and you waited for Election Day, what is the matter with you?
Right.
Don't wait.
You can't. You have to walk in.
Yes,
That's the bottom line.
There's apparently one location that they're keeping open because it apparently, in their view, meets the standard of this whole thing hinged on the Republican interpretation of it.
It's a tent of building.
Right. The voting has to be done in a building, and the car can't be the building, and so therefore all of this is invalid. Now, what difference it makes? I mean, if the building burns down and you have voting outside, it shouldn't make any difference, but this is what they were hanging their hat on. One of the whatever number of locations that they had was enough of a building that they decided to keep it open.
David, but let's go further. The Texas Supreme Court unanimously turned down this challenge twice under Texas law.
Yes.
That's the definitive word on what Texas
be.
law is. A federal judge doesn't get to second guess the highest court of Texas on what Texas law is.
You would think. If they had won, they would definitely have said that.
It's an absurdity. Of course, what they hang their hat on is, oh, yes, I do. Look at Bush v. Gore concurrence.
Yeah, I guess that's all they've gotten. It exists, despite the fact that the opinion says it doesn't exist.
They just
We're
don't
not here.
accept this, a court will never do that line. People who say that are stupid and living in a fantasy land. So say it'd be outrageous if the court, we will riot if you do that. We won't accept it if you do that. We're not going to be Al Gore and walk out and say, I disagree, but I accept. No, we're not accepting anymore. We are not accepting anymore.
I don't see why they wouldn't do it. I mean, it seems to have worked very well for Republicans. One of the comments in the that I mentioned others had made about the outcome of the Texas case is they've lost and lost and lost, the Republicans. At every turn, in every court they've gone to, they've lost on their claims. But voting is going on in Harris County according to their terms anyway, because there's still a chance that some court will do that thing which no court could possibly do, and don't worry about it.
Well, they've already done it a number of times. I mean, the Wisconsin state opinion, the shadow doctrine of the Supreme Court's a disgrace. You know, a few of them we've gotten 4-4s that have upheld rulings. North Carolina and Pennsylvania. But it's 4-4 is the only reason they've got upheld. The Eighth Circuit one, we lose. So if it had gone 4-4, the lower court ruling stands. All right. So they're primed and ready to do it if they can determine the outcome of the election. One of the key reasons Bush v. Gore happened is the court knew they were deciding the election. That's why they did it. They won't necessarily do it to be seen as making a decision to make them look bad on things that might not be determinative, but they will not care if it is determinative. If Pennsylvania is Florida 2000, I have no doubt that Coney Barrett won't recuse, and there'll be 5 votes to give the election to Trump, whatever the issue is.
If the chance is there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they won't do it if it doesn't determine the election.
Most
Why
likely
would
not.
they?
I don't know. The only thing I could think of is if they thought, we're going to need this, like we'll need the Bush v. Gore precedent
Bush v. Gore?
later. But
I mean, there really is one Bush v. Gore. There's one supervisor of election Supreme Court case that basically did nothing and asked the Florida Supreme Court to explain itself, which is outrageous as well. You. Oops, sorry.
Hey. The radio.
Sorry about that.
I'll mark that.
I don't have to explain anything to you. I'm the highest court of my state. States' rights. You heard of those?
No.
Anyway,
what was that?
Enough about that. I think I gave you my picture. It's a long strand away from your poll watcher story, but I do think it's all of a piece.
That. Yeah, well, it is, and they just every single thing that they can throw at knocking any votes out of the total, they'll do. And whether it's ridiculous or not, whether it's legal or not, whether no court would ever do this or not, whether they have any legal basis for making the claim or not. Like you said, just showing up in front of the camera and saying, "I've seen fraud" is enough. So.
Or if you're a respected pollster who dominates the RCP averages like Trafalgar and Insider Man, you can predict that the only way Trump loses Pennsylvania is through Democratic fraud. Yeah,
and that's an interesting play all by itself, too. You turn up with a poll. The polls have been saying it's Biden +5 in Pennsylvania for a week or two. Show up with a poll that says, no, it's actually Trump +2, and I'm pretty sure of that. And then, RCP adjusts its average, and so now it's a toss-up. And then when it comes in Biden +5, just like all the real polls have said for a week or two, you say, it was supposed to be Trump +2. That's a 7-point fraud. Obviously, it's massive.
That's exactly the plan. That is exactly the plan. There's just no doubt about it. And remember, Trump is going to lead Pennsylvania tonight.
Very likely.
Unless Pennsylvania has become miraculously good at doing something they've never done before, which is process absentee ballots. There's just zero way they're going to get the bulk of those done tonight.
Yeah.
So Trump's going to have a healthy lead at 11 p.m. tonight in Pennsylvania.
He sure could. I mean, unless things really are as wildly anti-Trump as we wish
if
they
he doesn't, just on the numbers, that's going to be a tremendously good sign for Biden in the real election. But the real election might not be the determinative factor, and that's what this all's been set up to do.
We ought to be looking ahead to this next one.
We are capable of trying to steal this, then you just haven't been paying attention, not just for 4 years, for 20 years.
Yeah, well, true. Yeah, I don't see how you could, if you know just the phrase Bush v. Gore rings a bell to you, then you can't not think that this is a possibility.
Right. I know that you're close to your break. I don't know if you want me to do Florida.
Sure, why not? Florida. It's fun.
You don't have Ian, but you do have John, I think you
Yes. Or at least we imagine that that's the case. We'll see what happens. It's not beyond the pale that she could just say, never mind. No, she would never do that.
That's right. So it would never not show up.
Right. It has happened, and today of all days, who knows what kind of emergency could arise. But yeah, let's do a little bit more after the top of the hour break so we can talk a little bit about Florida, and you can let us know the insider view of what's going on there. or at least on the ground.
I've heard from insiders, and there's cautious optimism, but I'll go into the details.
Okay. All right. Well, we can do that, and I find that there's a lot to keep an eye on. I'm wondering though whether anything will come out of this in terms of campaigns going forward. Presuming we have more elections after this one, let's say. It should be a democratic project everywhere. Although we didn't do very well with post 2000 projects necessarily in terms of, gosh, the voting system's a mess and we should really reform it everywhere. Florida has improved dramatically, as you mentioned, but a lot of places we really dragged our feet in terms of coming up with real vote counting reforms. But we really ought to find in states where there's Democratic control in the legislature and the Democratic governor in particular, the laws ought to be revised to facilitate counting early votes early, or as I say, count the first votes first. If you cast your vote in September, in October, the idea that you have to wait at the end of the line for people, the stragglers, the Republican stragglers who show up to vote in person, and their votes get counted before yours. I don't see why that. And I think that's a slogan you can run on. First votes first. That's your chant at the riot.
In Florida, because Florida set up a system to make sure that the early absentee votes in particular got counted, because that was mostly Republican votes.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. Okay. But you do what's good for you. That's all right. And so in Democratic states, that ought to be a no-brainer, as they say. So we'll see whether that gets put forward. But count the first votes first. And if you're involved in let's say a Birkenstock riot somewhere this year, that can be your chant outside the door. First votes first. First votes first. You chant it that way. It won't happen that way.
I like that one.
But it makes good basic common sense, right? If you voted first, your vote should be counted first. So as American a concept as I can imagine, and it ought to carry the day in a lot of referenda and in state legislatures across the country where there's a Democratic majority from here on in. All right, we'll be back in just a minute, and we'll visit Florida then. Armando will be with us. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Armando is still with us, and yes, we mentioned that we'd be talking a little bit about what's going on the ground in Florida, and it's your specialty. Are you there today?
I am.
Okay. So what do we need to know that we're allowed to know?
Well, you can know there are things that we know, and these are things that are concrete facts, not projections, modeling, opinions. Over 9 million people voted in Florida before Election Day, either through early voting or mail-in voting.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable turn. Just to give you an example, in 2016, there were 6.6 million early and mail-in votes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and there's been a role reversal. Yeah. Democrats are dominated mail voting, though they're still accepting mail votes today. You can walk them into the election office. You can also, if you're still a Florida voter and don't know what to do, you can take your mail ballot, or not even take it, just show up at the polling place and say, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to vote in person, and they will cancel your mail ballot, and you can vote in person.
Do you have to bring it with you in Florida?
You do not. It helps. It makes it easier. I would recommend you do.
Yeah, I think that's always a good idea.
But they can't stop you from voting, and not provisional in the booth. So Florida is, again, there's a lot of voter friendly things about Florida. So that's one more. There's no it's too late, you're screwed now. No. Florida, you can show up at 7 p.m. with your mail ballot. Stand in line. When you get there to the thing, you hand it to the person and say, I was going to vote by mail, but here's my ballot. Or without your ballot, say, I was going to vote by mail, but I changed my mind and I want to vote here.
Interesting.
And they have to let you do it. What they do is they check to see if your mail ballot's been received. If it's been received, you don't get to vote twice, okay?
Yeah, okay.
All right, you get to vote once. But if it hasn't been received, they cancel that mail ballot vote. It will not count when it comes in.
So they can track them individually like that?
Pardon?
They can track those things individually that way? And,
Yes, they do.
Oh,
Every
interesting.
voter's file.
Cool.
Every
Okay.
voter, all 14.4 million registered voters in Florida, they know if you voted or not. They know if your vote has been received or not. You can go look and see yourself
All
online.
right. Seems like
I mean, Florida's a model in so many ways. People love to make fun of it. People hate Florida. I get it. But in terms of voting, again, set aside voter ID and the felon thing that they did.
Yeah, I mean, the
it's
mechanics
as good
of
a
the
system as
to
there
work.
is,
All right,
in my
yeah.
opinion.
I mean, I guess, back in the old days, I'm sure that things were different, but I guess now that you've got the technology to be able to track or to put a hold on something and say, this person's going to vote in person, we haven't somehow counted your absentee
it
ballot yet,
also
but we
has
won't.
paper ballots that are kept, so they can be
Also
audited. A recount can occur, and paper ballots can be reviewed. So honestly, they have every protection you could want. Again, if there was a Democratic state government, it would be better in the sense that they would be, much more alert to making sure there's no flaws in the system. But Chris really created a very good system. I mean, that's to his credit, and he was a Republican when he did all this, and now of course he's a Democratic congressman for ours. So I've always liked Charlie Crist a lot, and I defend him against the different accusations that are made against him. People say he's lazy, he's this, he's that.
Okay.
I said, listen, he wasn't lazy about voting in Florida, so I'm going to give him a big up because on something that really mattered, the guy came through. Anyway, enough Charlie Crist talk. Where are we? So we had 9 million votes.
Yes.
Out of 14.4 million registered votes, which translates into about 63% turnout of the total registered voter world.
Yeah, I say stop counting now.
Pardon?
Stop counting
now.
The majority are in.
Yeah, I mean, the informed minds think we're probably ahead by close to 600,000 votes from the early.
Good. See, it's over.
And, that's a big amount to overcome. And it's not as plausible as it was. Remember, in 2016, 1/3 of the votes came in on Election Day. I think it's more likely that we won't top 20% of the total vote being on Election Day. That's a big drop. So even if Republicans dominate it, that doesn't guarantee them a win. I will just stipulate this. I think if they get 90% turnout, the Republicans, they're going to win. No one's ever got 90% turnout. The highest is 83. So it'd be pretty shocking to see it go to 90. I can say that the pace through 10 o'clock today, it doesn't reflect that kind of number yet.
Okay.
But, it's still early.
Sure.
I mean, they may be all waiting to the last minute just to own the libs.
I'm waiting in line to own the libs.
Yeah, who knows?
All
right. I'm just saying it's early to know what's happening any day. In my opinion, my focus has been throughout in my analysis of it because I think the polling, there's a group called NPA, which is what we call independent voters.
Oh, yes.
Mostly no party affiliation. I mean, there's minor parties that you can register with, and there's a small amount from there. But NPA is something like 27% of the total vote. So they, if the two partisan groups, Republicans and Democrats, cancel each other out, generally it's NPAs that decide Florida elections.
Okay.
But that only is true if we come close enough in matching them. We did not come close enough in matching them in 2016. There was 82% Republican turnout in 2016 and only 75% Democratic turnout. So we had a 7-point gap there. There are more registered Democrats than Republicans, less so than there were because a lot of Republican voters who were NPA and Democratic registered were, there was a campaign which struck me as weird that the Republicans spent so much effort on that of getting people to switch their registration to Republican.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't see the point of really spending much time on that, but they did. So the advantage is about 200,000 voters. There's 200,000 more Democrats than Republicans, but that 200,000 voter advantage doesn't mean much if they outvote you by 7%. So there's that. The other thing that you should remember about Florida in 2016 is that, according to the exit polls, Trump won the NPA, the no party affiliation voters, the independents, by 4. All right. So you put all that together, it turned into a 1-point win for Trump in 2016.
All right.
My thought is if we Democrats can get our turnout to 77%, expecting 82%, if we can cut it to 5, even better if we can get 78 and cut it to 4, and half that advantage that they had in 2016, that's enough, even if Trump wins, MPAs by 3 or 4. But the good news is that all polling seems to suggest that, in fact, Biden is leading. The numbers vary anywhere from 4 to 12 with NPAs in Florida. And it's those models that say, using those models from the polling, and even that we have a slight advantage in theory on crossover votes, a couple points, Republicans for Democrats, but I think that's going to be a wash at the end of the day. That's how they model out the early vote, absentee or rather mail-in, in person early, to lead to approximately a 600,000 Biden vote lead going into today. I think there's going to be 2 million votes today. I think we'll get 10.8 to 11 million total votes.
Okay.
So if the lead is really 600,000, let's say it's 500,000. Trump has to win today's vote, according to that, by 65-35, 2-1. In 2016, he won the election day vote by 11 points, a raw total of 360,000 votes. That overcame Hillary's early vote lead. That this was true. This is after counting. They knew this number. She had a 247,000 vote lead going into Election Day. Trump won Election Day by 360, thus won the election by 113. If we're truly at 500, the lower number that I'm giving you there, Trump has to win by 501, and to do that, if the turnout is what I think it'll be, he has to win by 2-1. It's possible that he could do that. I'm not going to say it isn't, but I think it's less possible if we get to 70s, if we can hold down the turnout margin for Republicans. There will be one. The Republicans will probably win. In my view, it'll look to be about a 1 or 2 point advantage, at least. If it gets to 5 or 6, then you start to worry. If it stays around 2-3, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Okay. All right. Well, that would be a nice outcome if we can get it, but we won't have to wait too long on Florida. That we've been told a number of times.
That's good news. There's a huge dump comes at 7. You'll get 60% of the vote by 7:15, and then there's a second dump at 8 from the Panhandle, which will be pro-Trump.
Ah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And frankly, unless it's extremely close, you'll probably have a pretty good idea who's going to win Florida by 8:30.
Okay, I can wait that long.
Yeah, it's 10 hours from now, more or less.
Yeah, right.
So in 10 hours, you'll know about Florida. Now, Florida is a must-win for Trump, and everything that we described before in the previous segment becomes moot. Same with Georgia. I don't know enough about Georgia to give you any informed discussion of that, of what's going on. I know turnout's through the roof, but other than that, your guess is as good as mine. I can't give you anything about Georgia or North Carolina. If we win North Carolina, that moots everything we discussed before.
Okay.
Polling is close. Turnout is through the roof. I leave it to everybody's imagination what that all means.
Yeah.
Texas is close. We win Texas, of course, it's really, really over.
Yes.
I mean, it literally
flee
is
the
over.
country over.
I mean, it's over. I mean, that means Biden could lose Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
And still be okay. Yeah, but he wouldn't, and it would be
He would.
You would
he
start
could.
to learn why.
That's how big winning Texas would be.
Yeah.
Texas is 35 electoral votes.
That's what the new fence around the White House is about.
Yes. And Arizona has a similar function. Ohio as well, though Ohio people are less optimistic about. I have no idea. I don't know Ohio at all. So maybe you should be optimistic or pessimistic about Ohio, but I can't say. But all of those states can help us avoid chaos and all the things we discussed in the previous segment. Florida, we're in the fight.
Okay.
I think we're in a good position. I really am focusing on how many Democrats turn out. I think if we get to 77 or 78% turnout, it's going to, to me, it's hard to see us losing if we get to that turnout level. If we don't, if we're at 75 and Republicans really go up to 85, boy, then it's sweat time.
Can't imagine sitting there in Florida as a registered Democrat and saying, I'm only about 3/4 of the way interested in turning out to vote.
Well, I made this point the other day. There were 500,000 people who applied for mail ballots who didn't return them as of yesterday.
There's always that, right?
And I wondered to myself, why would you go to the trouble of filling out an application for an absentee ballot?
Yeah, it's not automatic.
Get it and not turn it in. And the thinking of a lot of people is a lot of these people changed their mind, decided to vote by mail. In person. I'm a little skeptical of that, to be honest with you. I don't
some have done
the
that.
mentality of filling out a form.
Yeah, I guess
to get a ballot
this year in
filling
particular.
Filling out the form takes all the time. You got to put your ID. You got to do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well then you see on the news that the Postal Service is going to steal your ballot. Oh.
Yeah. All right, so as long as they show up and vote in person,
but see, I would have taken care of that already.
I would love to see a voter file analysis of that. No one has done it. I'm not going to do it. It's a lot of work. There are people who make their living at that. They should do it and let me peanut gallery it.
Yes, all right.
That's what I demand. I don't want to do the work. I just want to bitch about the work. So I'm waiting for that so I can peanut gallery it. But that's where we are. And unfortunately, I don't think anybody can tell you much more than that till 5 p.m. And then you'll see, what needs to happen in the last 2 hours. I think you'll have a better idea if there's this throng of Republicans that are going to push it to 90% turnout by 5. It's not that Republicans don't vote after 5, but they don't vote more often than Democrats after 5. It has been the pattern
I get you.
both this year and historically.
Now,
in the primaries, that's how it went too. So that we got that. That's where we are. Listen, my prayer and hope is we get a Florida call at 9 p.m. and boy, that'll be exciting and fun, and it'll be a night to remember. If not, we'll have to sweat it out and see how the rest of it goes.
Yes. So, right. I guess the next question is whether to just save for later in the week, only if necessary, all the stories about what happens if a state can't decide on its slate of electoral voters and how that decision gets made. I don't know if that's really worth covering today or not, since it all just might fizzle by midnight. But who knows?
Well, you're going to have plenty. You're going to have a month to go through every single scenario if you want. How they have the joint session. Everyone remembers Al Gore. This time it'll be Mike Pence.
Right.
Does Mike Pence have the power to accept or reject a slate of electors?
We don't know.
I mean, I would think there'd be a revolution if he decided he gets to decide whether he wins or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what it'd
That's
been
why
pretty funny
Pennsylvania set up so
if
nicely.
Gore had said, "I reject the Florida slate of electors."
Yes,
in
right.
2000. They said, "Why? Because it cost me
Uh-huh.
the election. I don't accept it.
Yeah,
Sorry. Now what are you going to do? Can't make me."
that would have been interesting. That's one of the reasons why the Pennsylvania thing set up so well, was they were saying one of the things that Pence could do with a contested slate of electors from Pennsylvania is say, well, it's not fair for me to decide. The only fair thing to do is to just say Pennsylvania's slate, no matter who it is thrown out. There are no electors from Pennsylvania. I won't accept electors from Pennsylvania no matter whose electors they are. And we subtract their 20 electoral votes from the 538 we have to count. And a new, now the majority is 260. And we have that, as it happens, was their planning. What if we win 260 electoral votes but not 270? And one of the war game scenarios being, what do we do with a contested slate from Pennsylvania? And you could have adopted that position. I'm so fair, I won't accept electors from either side in Pennsylvania. Of course, the outcome of that is I win, but obviously you see I did it fairly. I don't know that it sets up that way with any other state. 20 is a lot of electors.
I'm not an expert, but my understanding is that is not what's called for in the legal procedure that was set up by Congress.
Well,
but,
you know how much that matters.
I mean, I guess Pence could go because I say so, but
and at the moment, this is the makeup of the Senate, and they agree with me.
Well, that depends. Remember, this convocation occurs on January 6th. You'll have a new Congress then.
Oh, that count, yes. Well,
and as I haven't done the math, but my recollection is as we stand, it's 26-24 Republicans lead, but we have chances of flipping.
That's
one
true.
Or two.
We have a nice article
and
on
we
that.
might actually have the advantage, or it might be 25-25, in which case there's a deadlock, and hello, President Pelosi. So, that's oh my God, we have plenty of time for that.
Yeah, well, it might not be best served by going over it. I guess if we get to the panic stage and everything's in chaos and the internet still works, we'll tell you about it in the coming days. How about that?
Right. I mean, honestly, we'll know. There's going to be a lot of people playing it. Let's say what I think is the worst case scenario for tonight. We lose all the red swing states. We don't know Pennsylvania. Trump's leading. Michigan, Wisconsin, everything falls by the board, and it comes down to the blue wall states again.
Okay.
Well, then we do have to game out everything, from challenges to everything else, and see what happens. Because, again, suppose courts say you can't count anymore, and we're going to say, no freaking way. We're not accepting that. And we win the Congress. And the Congress says, no, we don't accept those slates. That's nonsense. Again, why am I doing this? Well, we have time for all that.
Well, yes, but we're trying to fill time now. So
yeah, well,
I do have.
Pardon?
I was going to say I do have. There's a Politico piece from a day or two ago. Let's see, what's the date on this one? It's even older than I thought. I guess it was just recirculated the other day. So maybe we go no further than the headline. But it was a piece from late September. Pelosi begins mustering Democrats for possible House decision on presidency. So apparently an actual letter circulated by the speaker emphasizing that the local races were extraordinarily important, particularly in places where delegations could flip. So they did have an eye on it. We'll see, there's not that much you can do at September 27th about changing the outcome of those races, but some last-minute resources could be directed there. And I know a lot of people did a lot of Moneyball-style analysis to try to find the delegations that were either tied or separated by one vote in favor of Republicans, and was there one seat somewhere in that state that was more flippable than others? Some So some great analysis done, and I think it steered a lot of money. And in a blue wave situation tonight, if enthusiastic voters are out everywhere, we could see that happen, and that would change the scenario entirely in terms of what ought to be possible according to the rules. And then the question is, have the Republicans been gaming this out without rules? And how much of what they think will happen will really happen? How many of the 1,000 Federal Bureau of Prisons guards that are said to be being dispatched to Washington to guard the White House tonight are going to show up? How many of the D.C. National Guard dispatched for this purpose are going to either show up and do their work or would actually fire their pepper spray balls at people if they were protesting outside the White House, or what? I don't know what's likely to happen at that point. But it was, at least I'll say this, it was disconcerting to see news reports of all the businesses and storefronts that were boarding up in Washington, D.C. It doesn't make us look like much of a healthy democracy to be boarding up every storefront in D.C. in anticipation of election results and not a hurricane.
Yeah,
so,
I
a
mean,
little weird out there.
The boarding the thing is, I mean, it really is a sad commentary on where we are, but it's where we are.
Right. And it makes a certain amount of sense. There could certainly be just random acts of any celebration for all we know. And somebody gets carried away and decides to throw a garbage can through a window somewhere, just not as a political statement so much as I don't know, I am angry with this store. They didn't accept my return online. I don't know. So why be that store, right? So everybody's boarding up. My neighbors are boarded up, and if they're looking to break a window, they'll break mine. So I guess I'll board up.
You've reminded me of something that happened to me the other day. I was driving on I-95 in Florida between Delray Beach and Boynton Beach, which is South Palm Beach County, and I got one of those Trump car parade things.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they weren't trying to run anybody off the road. They were just creating traffic jams. Again, they were single file or double file, so they're blocking two lanes, going, 45. It's our major interstate, like it is in most places up the eastern seaboard, and it was just annoying.
Yeah, sure.
Heck. And I was like, why are you doing this? Do you think I'm going to want to vote for Trump after you did this?
I don't know.
I'm trying to get somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. The traffic jams in New York and New Jersey, particularly unlikely to produce any changes in votes. But, just muscle flexing or, remember when this happened last election? It was so awesome because we're about to lose. And, this could be the end of the Trump era, and they're just kind of having one more party together, I suppose, is probably the most likely reason for a lot of this. And I don't know.
It's just stupidity, but it's what they do.
Yeah.
Look, what they did in Texas, of course, is much worse, extremely dangerous.
Yes.
That's unacceptable, of course, which means it was praised by Trump and defended by Trump because that's who he is.
Apparently Rubio as well, for some reason.
Ugh.
I don't know what he was doing.
Do not get me started.
All right, yes.
There's no one I hate more. I hate him more than I hate Trump.
Okay.
I really do, because he's just a disgraceful human being. Just disgraceful. I mean, and his approval rating's in the 30s now. And he's put himself where we have a decent shot at getting him with the right candidate in 22. I really think that that's where we are. We'll see. But just as a human being, I mean, just shut up.
Yeah.
Be like, don't say anything.
It wasn't called for at this point. He could easily have ridden this out.
It's like Bill Scher, who I know gets paycheck from Real Clear Politics, defending the Real Clear Politics average. You don't have to do that. Sean Trende doesn't defend it. Sean Trende, as you know, is a big sticking point with me and Greg Dworkin. Sure. And I think he's a scoundrel, and Greg thinks he's an honest, respectable figure. And I said, no, he's not, because he shuts up about everything that Real Clear Politics does. That makes him just a scoundrel, too. But, Rubio isn't even a Sean Trendy type. He's a guy who's defending the indefensible. So it's just terrible. All right, listen, I know you're coming to another break.
We are.
Expect Joan will show up, and that's I'll be eager to hear her thoughts on what's going on in Idaho.
So, okay, right, true. Let's find out if we have any on-the-ground reports to be had from the Idaho borders. And she's on her way in now. Thanks, Armando. We'll catch up with you after. All right, very good. Take care.
Happy Election Day. Keep the faith, everybody. Go vote.
Yes, do that. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is here. Everything is fine. Everybody's safe and accounted for. Nothing bad going on. I was just projecting that, on a day like today, anything could happen at work, politically speaking, and any sort of emergency could arise. But so far, so good at work. So, all right, Joan, glad to have you here today. And
I am glad to be here. I remembered it was Tuesday. How's that?
That is excellent. You're progressing nicely. That's good. Keep up the treatments. Well, I don't know.
I think this particular Tuesday would be hard to forget about.
I think that's probably true. That's good news, and we'll see what happens by next week. But what are your plans for the day? Are you guys dividing up shifts? Will you be up all night? You got an assignment for evening returns?
Like we're that organized.
I don't know.
We are organized, but it's going to be. The problem is we are all addicts, so everybody will be up all night.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We're going to be watching late and reporting and following along. I just finished an election protection post.
Okay.
So for the people who haven't voted yet, and
come on,
gosh, the numbers for who has are just huge.
Yeah.
97 million people had voted by yesterday morning. And most watchers figured that by this morning, by Tuesday morning, 100 million people will have voted already.
That's a nice round number. It's
double the early vote of 2016, and it's 71% of the total vote for 2016.
So, not much left to come in, and although I guess I expect...
No, there's a lot to come in. I mean, so far, all the states, particularly the battleground states, are reporting huge lines already. Great enthusiasm, lots of people out.
That is good. I mean, there's a large percentage.
It's looking to be a huge, huge turnout.
Yeah, I imagine that it would break all the records, even if we didn't know how much of it was in already, or even if there was no early voting. I imagine we would be looking at near record turnout, just given the fact that Trump is such a polarizing and disastrous figure. I mean, how do you not
and following
show up?
On the massive midterm vote of 2018.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That enthusiasm for voting hasn't waned.
No, a lot of people have been waiting for years.
The results will be the same.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. There's a lot of people have been waiting for years to do this, literally counting down days for this opportunity. So hopefully most of them have made it there. Yeah, I guess when I was saying not much more left, I mean, for 70% of last time's total to already be in. And I began thinking, all right, well, so that leaves about 30%. But I imagine we're going to surpass that. So, yeah, there could still be, what ends up being 40+% of the vote could still be rolling in today. I guess
and
that
it's
is a
likely
huge
to
chunk.
be a logistically difficult day for a lot of places.
Yeah.
There are going to be a lot of first-time poll workers.
True also. A lot of enthusiasm for that.
There are going to be a lot of people in line. It's going to be at places that you haven't necessarily voted before. There's just a lot of recipe for both intimidation kinds of problems because Trump's on the ballot, but also just logistical problems because of coronavirus, because of risk of infection, because of the huge lines, because of everything.
Yeah.
So if you are voting, if you are helping people vote, remember this number, 866 our vote.
Oh, all right. For
That's
trouble spots.
866-687-8683. Those are the folks at Election Protection.
866 our vote. Okay.
866 our vote. You can also text them.
Oh. All right.
And if you see problems with votes with poll workers not understanding what's going on, if there's voter intimidation, if there's just confusion, if lots and lots and lots of ifs, that's the handy number to have. They're staffed with 42,000 volunteers, lawyers and paralegals and people like you.
Me? Well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know the law, right?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it. It's in a book. Yeah.
They've got 30 command centers around the country. They've got 42,000 volunteers. They're ready.
Well, what am I doing?
They are
if they're
on
people like
this.
me. Okay. Well, people like me, but with, drive and energy.
Right.
So good. That'd be great.
There's also Vote America.
All right.
That doesn't
Who
have
are
the
they?
lawyers, but it has all of the information for how to navigate your own voting system in your state and your county. And you can text them at 48298.
48298.
And you can go to the 48298. And all of this is in a post I just wrote as well. It'll probably stay up toward the front of the page Daily Kos for most of the day.
Okay. That's easy enough to find, and I'll include it.
For people you're helping, these are great resources.
Yeah. I would imagine that I'm sure they'll be getting their share of calls and any number of things that could go wrong. And, there's also still a lot of work to be done today if you have already taken care of your voting and you really find yourself pacing the floor nervously. The local campaign offices, really up right down to they could probably use some donuts and water at this point, as well as for people who are standing in line,
right.
Lawn chairs, whatever.
Yeah, you can lights down to the, but call your local Democratic offices and see what help they want and need.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs or biting your fingernails or whatever it is you do when you're as tense as I am today,
there are
do
plenty
something.
to do.
Go stand on a street corner waving a sign. That's
sure.
The few times I ran campaigns, that's actually what we had all of the volunteers with excess energy do because it got them out of our hair and
it's a fun thing to do.
Do physically, that's something you can do.
Yeah,
doing something is
burn off that excess energy, and if you're a moderately excited voter driving on your way to the polls, and it's exciting to see the throng around. You don't want to see a long line necessarily. If you're lucky enough to have one of those precincts where you get it to breeze in and breeze out. If there's a little something extra besides that weird gauntlet of people trying to force sample ballots on you, it's nice. Is it signs, people waving? Oh, look, my people are in this neighborhood. I feel better about. I was going to vote anyway. Doesn't generate any new votes, But really, if you can't do anything but poke holes in the drywall at home, get out and do that. That's a good suggestion.
And be safe.
Yes.
Wear your mask.
Right, absolutely. Provide a good example for everybody. I'm interested to see how many people have stories about mask problems at the various polling places. I have a feeling that today is one of the days that the Trump supporters are mostly mask compliant today because they don't really they're in a place where they can be thrown out of physically.
Yeah, they want to vote. But I'm sure at some point this day we are going to see altercations over mask wearing.
Yes, I would think so. After they cast their vote, they can go out and cough on people. So,
cough on people.
Right. Or if they've cast their vote already, I'm sure somewhere there's someone is jerk enough to have already cast their vote early and then will go and cough on people in line, figuring that they are obviously Biden supporters. About, you wouldn't be able to tell unless I guess if they're showing up in weird flag motifed clothing, there's some chance that I might suspect that could be a Trump supporter. I mean, certainly could be just somebody with an overdose of patriotism juice going on. But fashion
if you
dictates.
Feel threatened, if somebody's doing that, call the cops, call election protection.
Yeah, right. We have those numbers. Annually we also will get calls of, I'm sure, of people who are stuck with the electronic voting machines, and no matter what I do, it switches my vote to Trump, and there's always 10, 15 of those from around the country every
we've already had one showing up in a, interestingly enough, Republican county in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Spalding County, voting machines are down countywide via system glitch. So they're sending paper ballots to all 18 precincts.
Okay,
and
well, paper, not a bad backup.
It's 66% white.
What?
And it went Trump. So,
Wow. They're just not good at running their
pretty
own systems.
Pretty interesting for Georgia to actually have a for real glitch instead of a voter suppression glitch.
Right. Well, sometimes that's what it takes to fix things like that. As you know, you rarely get cooperation from Republicans in fixing a problem unless they've had that problem happen to them. So
precisely.
Now there will be lots of white Republicans in Georgia that say it's an outrage that I went to vote and that the electronic voting machines glitched out and I had to wait, some of these white precincts. I had to wait 15 minutes for them to give me a paper ballot.
Yeah, what's interesting is how long is it going to take for them to get paper ballots to all of those places?
Well,
you could start with paper ballots to begin with.
That's true, too. What if they can't get the paper ballots there in under an hour because they're stuck behind a Trump parade?
A Trump caravan?
That would really be something. They knocked into my car and all the ballots spilled out and blew away. Sorry, you can't vote. Well, they weren't counting on that one, but okay. Well, there's always going to be something, and each election brings something new and crazy the next time. All right. Well, let's see what other. I think we've taken care of what to do if you spot trouble, what to do if you can't sit still but have already voted, and I'm trying to think of other.
You can always read Daily Kos. There's going to be stuff on Daily Kos as always.
Yes.
We always have lots of diaries from community members reporting what they're seeing.
Of course. Right. Oh, yeah. And that's sometimes the best frontline news of the people from around the country coming in and just reporting. I was just there and I experienced this. So if you voted and your local organization is full up on volunteers, or it's hurricane conditions where you are, I don't think that's happening anywhere in the country at the moment. I don't know, still on fire. That's a possibility in some places.
Well, yes.
You can sit at home and in the safety of your own home and stay away from others and reduce the possibility of the spread of the coronavirus and stay informed among a community of familiar folks who are just as nervous as you. So you can all be nervous or supportive to one another together. Easy.
That's the best thing about Daily Kos. We've gone through a lot of crap together at Daily Kos.
Yes.
We'll get through this one too.
Yeah. And that will, I guess also in the coming days, I suppose if things somehow aren't settled tonight, as the president has ordered from behind the third fence that he had erected around the White House last night, although why everyone was reporting it as unscalable, I have no idea. But
ladders, people.
Yeah,
ladders.
Looked as scalable as any other fence. I don't know. I asked that question last night on Twitter and just got, all the joke answers about, that it had been either coated in canola oil or that it had more to do with internet architecture that was non-scalable than anything else. I don't know. But I'm
this is like what, the
fifth
barrier outside the White House now?
I think, I think they're up to 3 or 4 now. And I had read that they were once again dispatching these quasi law enforcement officers from around the country, Bureau of Prisons people, possibly National Guard personnel, ICE police forces that they had done in the in response to Black Lives Matter protests over the summer, that they were going to do the same thing. Now that did not work out all that well for them the first time around.
Not.
And I don't know whether they expect different results this time, or whether it's just a show, or whether all the, someone else did point out. So there's 3 fences, including some allegedly non-scalable fence around the White House, a perimeter of 3 fences and 1,000 guards from the Bureau of Prisons, and Trump is holed up inside of it. Are we sure this is... At some point, they're just going to turn around and face inside and say that there's the result of the election. You're under house arrest or what?
He is.
Yeah, I don't know what that plan was supposed to be about, but I was discussing with Armando. Apparently, I see a lot of video being aired on the news stations from downtown in D.C. that they've boarded up like they were expecting a hurricane, except in anticipation of, depending on which reporters you're listening to, either unrest or riots. But no, I've seen no indication that that's something that should really be expected. I think somebody probably had the first idea of boarding their bank up or something, and figured they could get something thrown through their window, and then everybody else said, I'm not going to be the unguarded window next to these guys, so I'll put up boards too. But it doesn't put our best foot forward for the international community, let's say.
No, it does not. So, but we're kind of way behind that already.
We might not be able to escape from that.
That's shot. I mean,
yeah. Right. Well, no one's going to trust this now.
International community already. We may be able to redeem ourselves next year with a new president. But.
That might be nice. But yeah, all right. So we'll wait and see how that goes. Certainly, but I don't know of any other jurisdictions that anticipate or pretend to be anticipating that kind of unrest, and I'm not certain why it would necessarily. There's a great symbolic value, obviously, of protesting in Washington D.C., but.
Well, I could see them being afraid that all of the Trump caravans in the region are going to converge upon D.C. In the event he either loses or wins.
Yes, that's true, too. I don't know which one's worse in terms of anticipating lawlessness from Trump supporters. You're right. They could win and simply say, I guess this now means that if we go looting, we'll get pardoned. So let's just go steal some stuff. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of people who think they're doing Trump's bidding, or that they're following his orders by riding around and attempting to terrorize people. So that wouldn't surprise me. I don't know. Not too much more. Okay.
So
let's see.
We don't want to think about that part of it.
No. I could ask you, since you're there in Idaho, about your weirdo lieutenant governor, who I saw. I'm not certain what she's driving in this photo exactly, but Noticed the...
Oh, she's got a pickup painted army green.
Is that what it
It
is?
looks like she did it herself.
It does.
To...
I really wasn't sure what to make of this.
It looks like a paint job to me.
Yeah, like, somebody has just used flat house paint on this. I don't know what. So it looks like a pickup, I guess, with a giant cap on the bed, maybe. But, yeah, it's weird looking. And so she's had a photo with a Bible and a gun.
A Bible and a gun.
Go together.
Because she doesn't want to wear a mask.
Ah, is that the reason? Okay.
Yeah.
I figured that probably also went hand in hand, but this gun and this Bible mean I don't want to wear a mask. And then an American flag, of course, but sort of like after the fact, jammed up in like the luggage rack of the cap on the bed of this truck. Like it doesn't belong there, and it looks like it's a wooden flagpole, like she took it off of her house. And said, what's missing from this picture of this gun and Bible is a flag. But yeah, I was wondering what she was trying to get at here. But
she's trying to get at she's a kook.
Oh well, yeah. Oh, congratulations then. She's done that very well.
Yeah, she succeeded. Yeah. She's one of the main reasons why Idaho has had a really piss poor response to coronavirus, and why we're one of the hot spots right now is because our governor started out pretty good.
Yeah.
And then she started pulling this with her Idaho Freedom Foundation friends, and here we are. He did roll back from stage 4 to stage 3 last week because things are so bad here. And that was actually what she was responding to.
Okay. Well, I think a Bible and a gun is always a good response to something. I don't know what, but all right. Yeah, Idaho is showing up in my, nightly survey of the coronavirus numbers in terms of per capita new cases from time to time. And
I am pretty sure, just in defense of my state,
sure.
She's an Idaho native.
Oh no? All right.
No, she was born in New Mexico, so she's not actually one of us.
Yes. All right. Well, that's something you could rely on. It's problematic to be such a magnet, but that too is probably a result of the migration to, I think, northern Idaho of some very kooky people, and
yes,
sort of drew others like-minded weirdos in with them. So, not your fault.
Yeah,
we'll be clear about that.
They did move here by the time she graduated from high school, so Okay. But still,
yeah,
she's not a native.
Right? Yeah, that counts for something. Let's see. I'm trying to sort of scan the dial for other things that might make a significant difference or be a good distraction for a nervous election day. And I don't know, what else is on your agenda or has been on your docket lately?
Well, this is really, really enraging. Mm-hmm. Everything's enraging, but yeah, sure. Mitch McConnell says no more stimulus until January. He's ruled out doing anything in lame duck on coronavirus stimulus.
Interesting.
Interesting. He did that the day before the election.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I guess we kind of figured that was going to be the case, but yeah, I suppose I don't see any particular advantage in it for him. If Trump wins, he's like, oh, what do I need to stimulate anything for? If Trump loses, why do I want to help the next administration?
Because, of course, he's not going to think about how do I help the American people.
Well, no, of course not. Not even. I would imagine most of his attention is how do I get my hands back to their normal color, more than anything else.
There's that. I'd be really interested to know what's going on there.
We're
not going to find out. But
yeah, I mean it's private. We're supposed to recognize that, but it's clearly not good. And could be any number of things, I suppose. I saw he was in the news for his loving wife, Elaine Chao, telling everybody that he makes her warm cups of decaffeinated coffee occasionally. as a treat in the evenings, and I
What?
thought that was a little weird. I don't know. Yeah, just that's their home life. Somebody was, I think, particularly concerned with the fact that she would describe the coffee as warm as opposed to hot. Like, not really sure why, why that would
It's
be
already
the case.
decaf, and he only gives
Yeah.
it to you warm.
Right. I made this yesterday and I put it in the microwave. What is this? I don't know. I thought perhaps he had
Ew.
spilled it all over his hands and that accounted for the
I
color.
don't want to think about
So
Mitch
I don't know.
McConnell's private life, to be
Yeah.
honest.
That was kind of weird and uncomfortable to hear about. And all right. I don't know. I don't have any more.
do have an
McConnell
annual
news.
tradition to re-up.
Yes. Oh, okay.
It's open enrollment time in the Affordable Care Act.
There. Okay. Really? Well,
Yeah.
okay.
'Cause
Still
it
there.
does
We've
still
made it.
exist. The Supreme Court hasn't nuked it yet. It is still there. We don't know what's going to happen with the Supreme Court, so if you need insurance, the Affordable Care Act open enrollment is now.
Okay. Still exists.
And
Take
the
advantage
Trump
of it.
administration is celebrating that by allowing Georgia to take healthcare.gov off of its sort of marketplace of
I heard about that.
insurance possibilities, and they are sending everybody through brokers. So you can't,
Yeah.
in Georgia,
So-
go directly to healthcare.gov anymore to get your health insurance.
So open season and everything, but you have to go find it yourself. The whole marketplace. I mean, the whole point of I don't need to tell you, but the whole point, of course, being to establish a single market where people could go. And Georgia, for some reason, why Georgia in particular? Did they
Because
ask for
Brian
this
Kemp
permission?
thought it would be a good idea.
Just going to take down? Or how do they even do it? I mean, they can't take the
They
site
just
down.
they
just,
don't allow any people selling programs in Georgia,
insurance, yeah,
selling
in Georgia.
plans. That's the word for
Right.
health insurance in Georgia.
Yeah. Okay. That's
So healthcare.gov scrapped for the state. You have to go through an insurance broker or go directly to the insurance companies.
that'll work out great. So yeah.
So, you can't do the comparison shopping, or you can, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah, you got to do all the work yourself. All right. Yeah, that's bad news. Ironically, that would be undone with the, geez, why don't we just let people sell insurance across state lines? That would be kind of funny, but they haven't succeeded in that one yet.
No, they haven't succeeded in that one.
But that would be funny to see it undone that way. Yeah, all right. That's
I mean, funny
bit
in
of
a
crazy news.
dark, not good kind of way.
Yeah.
So, there's still that going on, but everywhere else,
Yes.
you can enroll in the Affordable Care Act.
All right.
For now.
Right.
You don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do.
Right.
My guess is that
Yeah.
they don't get rid of it. My guess is that we've got Gorsuch, who's been sort of wavering on doing some good and some bad things, and Roberts again, thinking, okay, they're really seriously talking about reforming the court, expanding the court, changing how we do our business, so let's not give them any fodder.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well, could be. Right. They could just go the other direction. It'll be interesting to see what Barrett, how she reacts to now being on the court. It could take her some time before she thinks of herself as an equal, in terms of her standing with her colleagues. These people have been her boss since forever. And getting called up to the major leagues is a rough transition.
I think she's enough of a zealot that she's just gonna.
You think she'll just
bulldoze
dive
her
right
way.
in? All right. Well, all of the people complaining.
She accepted the nomination
That
in
is
these
true.
circumstances.
You are correct. That's true.
She had no problem
Not
saying, "Okay,
intimidated.
yeah, pick me, and I will bring all of my children to your super spreader event to celebrate it."
Yeah. Right. No qualms about that. So I guess it's possible that she might just feel very comfortable among them, and a former clerk might perhaps feel that way, being elevated that quickly. Others would perhaps be intimidated. But they do have the historical example. If they're afraid of court packing, they know what to do to avoid court packing. History taught us that too. There's still time for them to switch. You're entirely right. So I hope you're correct. They also have a big abortion case coming up that I understand they delayed hearing for one more week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that gives us a chance to check in on it again next Tuesday and see how things stand. Things should be settled, maybe, kind of, by then, or else we'll be in civil war and there'll be no more internet, and this will be our last show. Thank you for coming.
I'm really nervous by the fact that we run out of government funding on December 16th.
I had completely forgotten.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that will definitely be a topic starting next week, and probably for weeks to come, because I don't see that it's anything that'll solve anytime soon. They'll go right up to the limit, I would guess. All right.
I would guess so.
Stay calm today, Joan. Thanks for your calming presence.
Here for your general angst needs on this day.
If you're not nervous, tune in. Very good. Thanks a lot, Joan. We'll check in with you next week.
Alrighty, bye-bye.
Take care.
From networksradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, what else is left in the world to discuss? Well, we'll find out if you stay tuned, as you should, for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, next with Justice Putnam. As you know, he will be surveying news from around the country and around the world. Let's see what's international. I see some names that pop up here. Russia. You'll never believe it. Stay tuned to hear what they're up to next.